Welcome to the TheoTherapist podcast, where theologically trained licensed therapists share health and healing conversations. Join our host, Dr. Trice Glenn, for conversations about real-life issues from both theological and therapeutic perspectives.
Welcome to the TheoTherapist podcast. My name is Dr. Trice Glenn, and I am so glad you guys are joining us today. I mentioned a little earlier in our podcast season that I have 3 awesome digital marketing interns, and guess what? They're back. We are back for our second installment of the Digital Marketing Intern podcast. And so I'm happy to have Alyssa, Lauren, and Jada with me today. What's going on, ladies? How are you?
Hi.
Yeah, they've been with me all summer long. We've been doing so many awesome activities and marketing initiatives. We've been working on content. I have a journal series. They've been helping me pull together some great marketing videos for our journals. So if you see some videos out there that have to do with our journals or the things that are on our social media posts, know that it's these 3 ladies who are giving their time and dedication. And I'm a little bit sad because they're all preparing for what's next. We're coming to a conclusion of our summer intern, and this has been such a great opportunity for us. And that leads us to today's topic. Today's topic is one that we collectively discussed, and we wanted to talk about navigating that kind of back to school angst or jitters that comes up. We all at some point in our life have had to start again, right? Whether it was first day of school or whether it's coming back as a senior, and just what that means in different spaces. And sometimes starting a new year comes with a lot of different emotions. It comes with a lot of different feelings. And so I just wanted to give people who are right in the thick of it an opportunity to talk through that. So that's what we're going to do today. We're going to talk about navigating kind of those feelings and, sometimes that excitement mixed with anxiety of starting a new school year. School year starts here in another week or two, believe it or not, for most people. And so here we are trying to figure out, how do I navigate this change that's on the forefront? So that's going to be our guiding question, basically, is navigating change and transition, particularly around the school year and kind of what that looks like. But I'm going to start off by saying, I have over 25 years of working with youth and getting them ready for first days of school, and being a youth pastor to many youth, I have an opportunity to see them kind of get excited about whatever that next landmark is. It might be they finally are a freshman, or it might mean 8th grade year where they're at the top of the food chain for middle school. It might be new kicks, it might be the fact that they were able to go to the Nike outlet. It could be a whole lot of different things that are kind of getting kicked up for them. But what stands out the most for me is recognizing that every time you're about to start a new transition, you're about to start a new change in your life, there are these emotions and these feelings that come up. And sometimes no one else can understand but you what that means for you. I'm curious, for all of our professionals who are on this podcast with me, what was it like for you, like first day of school? Is there a memorable first day of school that stands out for you?
Personally, the most memorable time that I had when starting school was probably my 6th grade year, which is the beginning of middle school. I had actually entered into a private institution, so it was a lot to process and get used to.
Oh, wow. What made it so much to get used to? What was the hard part of getting used to something in that environment?
Well, the institution that I was at the time was integrated with high school as well. So not only was I dealing with people in my age group, but I was also dealing with people who were older. So it was definitely a new experience overall.
Oh, wow. I can imagine that. I haven't had a lot of experiences where they had large age gaps in one room or like one school. I kind of did the traditional elementary school, middle school, high school, and then of course you're going off to college. But I can imagine if I were a poor little elementary school student and you had some high schoolers roaming around, that'd be a whole different kind of experience for me. I'm not sure that I would appreciate that, depending on how kind the high schoolers were.
Yeah, definitely.
How about you other two?
Yeah. I definitely feel like my most memorable moment was probably my senior year of high school, first day of school, because I feel like every senior, well, most are like so excited to finally be seniors and be top of the chain in all of the K through 12 schools. So yeah, That was such a fun time for
Yeah,
me.
it's something about being at the top of the food chain, whether it's sixth grade for elementary school or eighth grade for middle school or definitely senior for high school. There's something about being able to say, hey, I know I have this. I'm confident. I'm at the top of the heap. Everybody's got to look up to me or at least move out my way because I'm at the top of the food chain. Jada, what about you? Is there a memorable first day of school that comes to mind for you?
Mine was, I would say, like freshman year, starting high school. For me, it was a fresh start. When I left middle school, it wasn't the best time for me. I really only left with one friend. So I was excited for the fresh start and to find out something new about myself and know what I can get involved with.
Yeah, and I'll tell a little bit, kind of about my story. First of all, I'm the kid that loves school. Not necessarily because I loved academics, but I'm like an extreme extrovert on the inside. So that just meant I had like hundreds of people that I could hang out with all day long. For me, ninth grade, there was something about going to high school that just, you couldn't tell me I was not the person. Going to high school meant I'm grown now. In my mind, that was grown. You couldn't get any growner than high school from where my standpoint was. And so I was so geeked up for ninth grade. I actually walked to take high school pictures that day. I walked to school. I was so geeked up. I was like really ready to be a high school student. I don't know what difference it made from eighth grade to ninth grade, but in my mind, you could tell me nothing. I'm in high school now. I was just at the top of the food chain in my mind as a ninth grader. Keep in mind, I was not a cool ninth grader, but in my mind, I was in high school. That's all I needed. I just needed to be in high school. I can work it from
Okay.
here. If you could get me to high school, I can work it from here. And I think about so many of the kids that I get a chance to encounter, different landmarks affect different students differently, right? A kid may have been really comfortable with elementary school, but then middle school, is a little off-putting because in middle school, a lot of kids get off into cliques and they talk about each other. And, some of them have a hard time with puberty. And so different transitions sometimes spark different emotions in us. I think going to college, of course, you guys can probably relate to this. There's a little bit of insecurity going to college because now, I might have been smart in my high school. I might have been the smartest in my high school, but now I'm going to a place with all the smart kids. Everybody was smart. So I became average overnight. All of a sudden, now I'm in this place where everybody kind of has, something that they could, puff their chest up about. And so sometimes feelings are going to come up. Feelings are going to come up where you have to navigate either through some confidence issues, some self esteem issues, maybe, depending on what's going on at home. Maybe there's some situations of frustration. I know one of the things that was big and still big is kind of making sure you got first day of school clothes. You got to be able to have new clothes and you have to have that outfit together. But what if there's some financial stresses at the house or your parents don't buy into that? Some parents are just like, you're going to wear whatever you wear and it still fits. Like that's your life. And so there are lots of different feelings, I think, that come up when starting this new school transition that I think we all should be paying attention to. Are there any feelings that you guys kind of tapped into, other than obviously some excitement that's memorable for you or some that you think are important for others to pay attention to?
Yeah, I feel like nervousness is such a common feeling, especially going into my freshman year of college. I was so nervous because like high school, you're nervous, but like not as much as college, I feel like, because you're meeting so many different people. And then your classes in college they can have like 100 people in there. So I personally was so nervous about that.
I tell this funny story about how, I'm from a moderate high school size. My whole graduating class was like 211 people, and I knew all 211 of them, right? My first class in college was an 8 a.m. survey class, like intro to psychology or something. It was in an auditorium that was freezing cold, and there were 300 people in this one classroom. I hadn't been in a room with 300 people other than graduation. And so here I am, and I'm expected to sit in this class and actually listen and pay attention and not be stunned by the fact that 300 other people in this classroom made it to this class with me. And I'm supposed to make an A in this with them. And I was like, we can't all make an A, can we? Like, what does this look like? It's a whole different reality, particularly when you're starting out in college. simply because so much is changing at one time. And that's not even counting the other developmental things that are happening with like new social groups, new environment, living away from home, all those other things that go with kind of going to college. But I definitely can tap into what you're saying, Alyssa. There's some nervousness that automatically kicks in, right?
Yes, for sure.
What about you, ladies?
Well, personally, I was slightly nervous, but I was more excited entering into college only because I like the idea of meeting new people. Because the schools I've been to, it's always been kind of the same people over and over again.
All right.
Yeah, I like the opportunity just to, meet more open people and to experience different things, people, and, just different norms.
Yeah, I think that was half of it. When you're like, I don't know about you guys, and this might not have been your experience in most of the cases, but for some people, you go to elementary school with a certain set of people, but middle school, they just throw you in with all these different elementary schools, and all of a sudden now you got all these new people you didn't know. And then you get adjusted again, right? And now you go to high school with pretty much the people you went to middle school with. But then when it's time to go to college, you start that whole process over again. Now I got people from all over the country and all over the world. And I've got all these new people that I have to figure out, okay, how am I going to interact with you guys? And let's not even talk about having to live with somebody you don't really know. Sometimes that's just another level. You're in my personal space now. That's a whole different level. But there is an excitement about getting to meet new people, right? There's an excitement that, hey, I might make a friend here. I might make a friend in a person I've never seen before because it's not my same old folks.
That's true.
What was it like for you, Jada?
I was nervous. I was kind of if and an about it with me being in a whole different age group, I will say. So that it is, I had fun. It had its moments. It was good. It was bad. I tried my best, to at least try and fit in. Mostly everybody that was there, they've kind of been there since freshman year and on. And here I am, a transfer student trying to find my little niche and fit in. But I guess I try not to stick to too much of that age gap. I do try and, be around as much people as I could, but I just kind of found myself being more off to myself more times than anything and just studying. And there's nothing wrong with that too sometimes. So,
and you bring up a really good point, Jada. Not all students are traditional students. Some students decide at different points in their life, either now I'm ready to focus and actually be a good student and head to college. And some people are on second careers and third careers, and they go back and they start college, at 30, 40, 50. And so it's still the new school jitters. It's still, I'm starting this new thing. I've got to deal with my own perhaps insecurities about whether I'm good enough or whether I can navigate this, or how am I going to navigate this? I've got to make new friends in this new environment. I've got to adjust to professors when that's not something I'm used to. So adult students, I think, add even another layer to that because you've still got all the demands of life and you're starting over again. And so, so many different, I think, emotions that can get kicked in. Excitement usually is right there, but there's always some, a little bit of nervousness and anxiety, sometimes sadness, at ending that last chapter. Yeah. Some people don't want to leave high school. They really are just like, I'm peaking here. This is my spot. I want to stay here. I hate to go to this next place where I may not, I'm going to be a small fish in a big pond. Whereas before, I had a whole lot of different identity things connected to where I was in that last place. Some people are frustrated. Some people are fearful of, fear of failure, fear of success, lots of different things kick in a change and a transition. But it's just important to be aware of what's going on and to do something with it, some positive way to cope with it rather than try to run from it. When you think about coping with change and transition, how did you cope if things just didn't feel, totally comfortable in the beginning? How did you cope with like the change and transition from one thing to the next or into the new school year?
So my transition went from I was in that peak of COVID for me. So really it was around the time of when things were starting to let up a little bit more, and it was like we were finding a cure at that time, around that time. So, and then I was coming out of my apartment too. So I was living on my own with another person, transitioning into somewhere else where now I don't have a choice of where I live. I don't have a choice of who I'm rooming with. So it's like I'm coming out of being an independent adult to now being dependent back on my parents where I haven't been for a while, going to a whole new place, that was the exciting part about it. But for somebody coming out of an independent mind into an adult going back to a dependent mind, it was hard. I It was a big adjustment. I had a lot of uncomfortable periods. Like I said, I found myself off to myself a lot of times. But I will say I was outside with everybody. I will say that was a lot to my roommate.
That sounds like a coping strategy.
That was to my roommate. Yes, I was very blessed to have her. And for as long as I did, I was very blessed to have her. She unfortunately had to go back home by the time I graduated last year. That transition, having somebody there and I guess being comfortable with them and then being off on your own and going out and pushing yourself to do those things that you used to do with that person. It was a big adjustment, but I will say it pushed me to be more assertive with myself and to really just be out there, even if it's just by myself.
Yeah. Doesn't that make a difference, kind of who you walk this journey with? Particularly once you get into kind of the college years, it's a whole different thing. I think one of the things that most people don't really pay enough attention to is what happens when friendships shift and people come in and out of your life. And that tends to happen with transition. Somebody you might have been cool with last time, you're not cool with now. Or you're in a new environment and you don't have the people you normally would hang with. And you got to form new friendships and new bonds. All of that is a bit, it's a challenge. Anytime you have to begin new relationships or you're forced to kind of end some old relationships, that always weighs on us in a certain way. And we do have to find a positive way to cope with that. Because for some people, that's very anxiety producing to say, hey, I can't hang with who I used to hang with. Or, I'm a person, when I was in my undergrad, I think I ended up with 4 different roommates in the course of 4 years. It got crazy all of a sudden. Not crazy. It got hectic all of a sudden. It got, I remember those stories. It got hectic. My first roommate, it was somebody off campus and, it was a very hectic situation. And so I left that one and then went to an on-campus situation, and that person had some challenges. And so left that person. And then, I thought I had somebody else, and then they didn't come back to school. And then ended up with another strange person that just showed up in my room. And that person stayed for 1 year, and then her finances got wonky, and then she left. And then I got another new person. And it's just, constantly finding ways to adjust to change and transition. It's just a part of adapting and kind of being resilient in life. But we've got to find some positive way to kind of cope with the new changes that happen for us. I'm curious for you, Lauren or Alyssa, how do you cope with the change and transition processes that you find yourself in?
I feel like the best thing that helped me cope from like all the change and everything, because I moved 3 hours away from home and I went to live with 3 other girls, but one of them were my childhood best friend. So I luckily knew her. And then one of the other random girls that I'd never met, we became best friends. Her name is Emily, and I now live with her. So I feel like a good thing came out of it because I formed a really good friendship from that. But it was also really hard from like moving so far away from.
So it helped. And I'm going to pull out my therapist terms here. You had a transitional object. You had a friend that you'd already known that you were able to take into that transition with you. It sounds like that helps, right?
Yes, for sure.
I took my teddy bear to college. That's as close as I had.
I luckily had my best friend.
How about you, Lauren?
Well, the biggest thing for me was to stay true to myself. I generally do like meeting new people, but my biggest thing is if I feel like we don't fit, then I'm okay with accepting that. So it's just very important to stay true to yourself and to do what works for you.
I definitely think that's the key. Being true to yourself and making sure that you have an opportunity to check in with yourself, right? Like you're intentional to say, hey, what's going on with me in this? Sometimes we're not even paying attention to how many stressors there are until we feel overwhelmed. And then, of course, that's when it's kind of harder to navigate the things that we're dealing with. I'm curious, though, for someone who maybe is a parent that's listening or a grandparent, or auntie, and they want to support a student that's going through a transition, and maybe them like me, they've been out of school for quite a while, and so they're not quite sure what to do to support their student now. I'm curious what you guys think, since you are closer to Generation Alpha than the rest of us. what do you think would be some good recommendations or some suggestions for them to help a student that's going through the transition of getting ready to start? What is it that you would tell parents to help them, prepare their student for this upcoming new year?
So the advice that I would give to parents who are dealing with transitioning children is basically I would just be supportive. I would recommend being supportive and taking time to hear your child out. So if they are experiencing troubles at school, then I would talk to them about it, and maybe try to work with them to kind of get them to where they need to be.
Absolutely. Talking to them, I think, is the key. Being open to hearing those conversations. Sometimes it's that car ride conversation or that check-in, after that first couple of days of school, like how are things going, just to see if there are any mood shifts or changes. I think that's important.
I agree.
I feel like the best memory I had with my mom was our car rides to school. I was late every single morning, but we had a good time. We got in the car every morning and we always just had conversations. We didn't listen to music or anything, and we would just talk about my life and her life and everything. And I feel like that just made me feel so much better, her being there, because I cheered. So I went to school for almost 8 hours a day, and then I was at cheer until 6 at night. So we didn't really have that much time to hang out at nighttime, but in the morning, I feel like that helped me a lot. So just being supportive and being there to talk, I feel like it's really
Right. And
important.
it sounds like being intentional to create spaces to talk, right? Yeah, that makes a difference. I think sometimes when we start with the natural, hustle and bustle of trying to get kids places and make sure you get to work and all these other things, sometimes those conversations kind of get missed, especially if your kid is like not a car rider, but your kid like rides the bus or something. I think finding intentional spaces at some point in the week to do a check-in. I'm a fan of a good Chick-fil-A day. Where we just go and hang out and talk and, shoot the bobo and figure out what's going on with you and how your week is going. Particularly that first couple of weeks, because there is so much change and transition. There's new academic levels, there are new friends. Sometimes the social groups have changed. Sometimes the pressures of that environment, are not going well for a student. So it's really important to do that check-in, I think. What do you think, Jada?
Definitely, I definitely agree with definitely agree with Alyssa on creating that space. Definitely creating that space, because more likely your kid's gonna be active, one kid's not.
Maybe.
But you still want to be there for that person. Maybe. You just, it's always gonna be one or the other. So I always, have that openness, showing up for them, supporting them, regardless of what it may be. Even if it's something embarrassing to them, at least they have busted up the courage to do this. And the biggest thing that they would need out of you is either showing up. Biggest thing is supporting.
Definitely. I think one of the things that I found in working a lot with parents who have what I call super busy kids, they're not just busy kids, they're super busy kids. These are the kids that have like a resume in the 9th grade because they're active in lots of things, because this is the generation where they've got a sport and an academic and an extracurricular and the academic bowls and all the other things. And the pressures of that sometimes are overwhelming. And at the beginning of a school year where some kids might have excitement, some other kids start feeling pressure from day one that I've got to get all these things together. I've got to do these things or there's something wrong with me. And so just remembering to be gentle with your students. If they need to ease into things, let them ease into things. I know there are lots of students who are very active, and particularly if they're doing something after school or extracurricular, that's going to be a stress and a strain on their academics. So just finding and creating spaces to remind them that they are not their academics and they are not their athletic sports and they are not their extracurriculars. Those are just things they do and things they can do, but that's not who they are. I think so many kids face the pressure of feeling like failures if they don't think they're as successful as someone else in something they participate in. We know comparison is the robber of joy. And so we have to be very careful with our students about creating spaces that say, hey, these are the things that we all have as responsibilities, but that's not who we are. You're a great kid. You're this kid, you're the kid that's humorous. You're the smart kid. You're the kid who loves and is compassionate. Like reminding the student that it's not about the things that they do, that determine their character, but it's who they are. I think that's super important. I think as students are beginning this school year, my hope and my prayer is that those that are closely connected to them, that either function as a parent or a loved one or a mentor, will be extra intentional. There's so much happening right now in our world and in our space that they'll check in with the students. And if the student is struggling, get them connected to somebody like a therapist, a support person. Even check in with the school counselor to make sure they have another layer of support to navigate through what's going on for them this year. You might imagine adults are dealing with a lot of stressors. Well, guess what? Things roll downhill. So kids are too. So make sure that you're being intentional with that. I want to thank my awesome intern panel today. I love being able to do podcasts with them. I might have to bring them back from college, just to make sure they can come do some more. But this has been an awesome opportunity to have a dialogue with them and get their perspective, because they've had, nearly as many first day of schools as I have. And so I'm glad that I get a chance to have this conversation. Please make sure that you continue to tune into the TheoTherapist podcast. We have a lot of great episodes happening later on this year, so make sure you are paying attention. I also want to add one brief note. Our practice, Solace Counseling and Consulting, has a major celebration coming up in the month of September 2024. We will celebrate 10 years of empowering others to go further in the service of mental health and well-being. And so we want you to celebrate. We'll have some celebration initiatives happening this year. But we just thank you for participating and thank you for listening. Please like and share and follow. And you guys have a great week, and we'll see you next time.
TheoTherapist Podcast, real talk at the intersection of theology and therapy. Check out Dr. Glenn's new journal series titled Brain Dump Journals for the Busy, available on Amazon. Visit our websites for more information at thetheotherapist.com or catriceglenn.com.